issues. And it's not till now that I've really had the understanding that this is where the rejection issues come from. It's learning to be a good girl, and if I'm not a good girl or I'm not a good boy, then I'm not acceptable and I'm not okay. And so we're so afraid of that rejection that now we're growing older and we're parents, and there are so many parents out here trying to do something different, trying to move to a more love-based place, and society, our friends, our inner circles are saying, are you kidding me? What do you mean you pull them for a time in? How can you accept that? How can you allow this child to talk to you this way? You know, I look at it that, and it's hard when we haven't had that voice, and we're going to talk a lot about finding our voice, but it's really hard when we haven't had our voice to allow our own children to have a voice. It creates a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, because if my child is screaming at me in the middle of the store, well, what does that mean? That means that I'm a really bad parent. That means that I'm not doing a good job. So therefore what? I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I move into a place of feeling guilty. When we act outside the norm, it's really hard to forgive ourselves for not being who we think we're supposed to be. Not who we are, but who we think that we're supposed to be. And so we try and stay inside that norm, but then we get stuck with all of this shame, and we get stuck with all of this guilt. That shame and guilt creates all of this self-judgment. And in my self-judgment and my not being good enough and needing to do better, what happens is that I begin to have judgments about the rest of the world. There's not any of us that has any judgments about anyone else that it's not true for us first. It's always a mirroring effect. And so I begin to judge myself, and I become my own punisher. You know, what's the matter with me? Many, many parents, and I remember going through this myself. I remember, you know, trying to raise my daughter and say, you know, you're supposed to be the love-based place, and how could you yell at her? And I remember losing it one night because she stayed out till 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, how could you do this to me? And then when I realized what I had done, when I calmed down a few minutes later, you know, maybe a half hour later, at that point, I said, well, that was really selfish of me. Who am I to make this about me? Because it's not about me. And that's not really loving. And if I'm not loving and I'm not in there and I'm not trying to be understanding and I'm not talking to her, then we're not ever going to heal. And so we become our own worst critics. We become our biggest judges. We become the ones that punish ourselves. If you think about some of the things that so often we'll say to ourselves, we would not even dream in 1,000 years to say that to another person. You know, do you look in the mirror and say, you know, God, you're getting so fat, or, you know, look at all those wrinkles, or look at this about you, and we pick ourselves apart, and we destroy ourselves. We would never say that to anyone, but yet we do that to ourselves. And the more we do this, the more and more powerless we become. And so that would be a picture of just typical society, right? What happens if let's up the ante a little bit. Let's talk about when my life has been ongoing traumatic events that haven't been expressed, that I haven't been able to talk to anybody about, and then I've had to keep it to myself. And maybe instead of reward or punishment or good and bad or, you know, attention versus emotional distancing, I've had a whole lot more of punishment. I've had a whole lot more of the bad. I've had a whole lot more of the emotional distancing. When there's more bad or good, or the bad outweighs the good, or it's that severe in the first 3 years of our lives, we become completely powerless. In that powerless state, now I'm more than likely an adopted child, right? Or maybe I've just had a really, really rough upbringing. It doesn't always have to be adoption. Now you want me to make a bed, or you want me to perform in school. Let's even take the school thing. The school thing is a really good one. My adoptive daughter, having had failing all of her classes, a lot of her abuse that happened was always, well, if you would just get A's, then we wouldn't beat you and wrap cords around your neck. If you would just get A's, then we would let you have friends. If you would just get A's. And so she has a whole lot of shame around what her grades look like. And so early on, I told her, I said, you know what, honey? Just fail. Fail it all. Because if you fail it, then what you're going to figure out is no matter what, I'm going to love you anyway. That you're always going to be okay. These are your grades. They're not mine. Whew, the thought of that is terrifying. And you know what? The first year she did horrible. She was in school for 3 classes during the summer. How she actually pulled off getting to the next grade, I have no idea. Anything from me of, come on, honey, I know you can do it. Any push to say, come on, let's study, would have shut her down in a heartbeat. Because it goes into a place of, you know what, I'm not even going to try because I can't do it anyway. So why even bother trying? And so that powerlessness sets in, and then they automatically give up. Or maybe they are kind of doing good. Maybe they're in a place where they just kind of go through and they're cruising through school, they're doing okay, but at some level we can't reach them, and they're really either superficial or they're incongruent. My friends are, my heroes. They'll always love me. The neighbors down the street are always going to love me. My teacher loves me. Everybody wants to adopt me. My real mom would have been the one that I know she loves me and she's waiting for me. And you hate me and you treat me like crap. Or relationship is just so scary and I'm constantly in survival. This is a kiddo that I'm working with. And these are some of her pictures growing up. And she came into my office one day and she was like, oh, let me show you all these pictures. And my heart kind of sank because, and I just picked 3 of them out, but there was picture after picture after picture like this. And pictures can say so many words. And so I want you to look at the one where she's a baby, this one right here. She's shut down. She's tuned out. She grew up in a house with a lot of domestic violence, probably was in the home for like 5 or 6 years. And so when all of that is going on, what we learn is to tune out, to shut down. We become invisible. If I'm really quiet and I don't make any noise, I can just disappear. How many of us have been in a place where we thought, man, I just want to go away. I want to crawl under a rock and I want to hide, or I want to crawl under a rock and die. That's a really big statement that we have. Then she gets a little bit older, and she's still in that home in that really violent situation, and you can see the level of hypervigilance in her eyes. She's constantly looking for a threat. I'm constantly searching my environment. This is where a lot of our kids are, and maybe even us. We're in that constant hypervigilant state where we're constantly looking for a threat, and so fear is so often false evidence appearing real. We see the world through the lenses of our experience. If I've had a lot of bad experiences, people hurt me, somebody really important has left me, then of course the same thing is going to happen again. Later on, she gets older. I think she's about, 9 or 10 here. She's 20 now, and she looks like she's about 15 years old. the trauma that she went through was so significant that it really stunted her physical development in addition to her emotional development. Here is where she gets really angry. She's really mad. And again, it's picture after picture after picture after picture. And she's thinking, don't take my picture, leave me alone. But now she doesn't have a voice, so everything gets stuffed in. I always tell, kids and parents that if it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's going to come out of your hands and your feet. And so it's always about being able to find your voice. And again, we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I want you to stop and actually everybody just kind of sit back in your chair and take a deep breath in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And this time I want you to breathe in through your nose. I want you to see an elevator in your head. And as you breathe out of your mouth, I want you to bring that elevator from your head into your heart. That is the heart-based place. That is the place that I really want you to feel the information. I don't want you to hear the information in your head tonight. I want you to really feel the information. And so I want you to think about this for a minute. Our survival is based on connection. We need to connect with people. When we learn that that connection is not possible, we move into a state of fear. We are born to be in a love-based, joyful, blissful state. That state is uninhibited, it's excited, it's out there ready to learn and to experience everything out there. Fear is something that we've learned along the way. It's not a part of who we're supposed to be. But think about, for so many of us, how many fears we really have. If I go to work, am I performing good enough? Are the people around me going to like me? Is what I'm writing good enough? Is, why is it that I do everything for my child and then they still hate me? All of those fears are based in a story. They're based in our own experiences. So how do we move from that fear-based place? I can't move my cursor because now I've got this little highlighter on. Okay, normal non-drawing tools. Okay, here we go. Someday I will join the Greek squad. Let's talk about 3 ways to get back home, to get back to who we are, who we're supposed to be. Because it's in that space, it's in that loving space when we're calm, when we're open, that healing starts to be created. And, the one gift that I will say hands down that every parent that I've worked with and most people working through this modality find out is that the biggest gift that comes to us is that our children become mirrors of all our leftover, unfinished business. Even our spouses, our significant others become mirrors of that leftover business that makes us react, that makes us yell, makes us scream, makes us, say stupid things at times. The gift in this is being able to do some of our own healing because we can't give anyone the things that we haven't received. We try to, and we're actually masters at finding those things and seeing those things, but trying to actually do it becomes extremely difficult. So, finding my voice. My voice is a reflection of how I feel about myself. there are people who have very small, tiny